Okay, so hello everyone, welcome back, and today we're going to talk about minerals. So continuing on with our diet and exercise lecture. So last time we talked about vitamins, and today we're going to move on to minerals. So I hope you're doing well, and let's get straight into it. If we list some of the key functions and the source of minerals, so what they are, so they're basically divided into two groups. So we've got bulk elements and trace elements. The only reason they're divided is that we need a lot more of these bulk elements than the trace ones. So obviously we need our sodium, chlorides, potassium, calcium, phosphorus, magnesium and sulfur. And then on the trace side we've got copper, fluorides, iodine, iron, manganese and zinc. How do these work? So they basically work when they're in their ionated form. So for example Na+. Yeah, they work in the body to do different stuff, and we're going to look at some examples from each of the sections and what happens in deficiencies as well as toxicities when you have too much of them. So firstly, if we talk about electrolytes, so that's your bulk ones, and some of the main ones are, as you can see down there, so your sodium and potassium, which kind of generate such things as the sodium potassium pump, so ATPase, and chlorides, which do stuff like the chloride shift in some of the cells as well. So what are electrolytes? So the substances that dissociate in water to form these charged ions, and they distribute the water content in the body basically, and these can therefore affect nerves and muscle functions. So then the word on trace minerals, so they're needed in much smaller amounts and are easy to overdose on, or if you're taking supplements for example. And if we talk about bioavailability of these minerals, so we've got binders which reduce or increase absorption such as phytates, and then we've got competitive interaction, too much of one molecule. For example, some of these molecules have the same charge, which means that when transporters take them and we've got, for example, too much of sodium, then some of the other molecules that also have a +1 charge may be underlooked. So then we also have the chemical form, which plays an effect. So for example, iron, your Fe2+ is much easily absorbed than the Fe3+. Also, when we consume iron 3+, we also need this molecule called ceruloplasmin that's developed from copper to allow the change in charge to Fe2+ in the body. Also, how the food is processed plays a really high role as well. So firstly, if we talk about bulk minerals and we talk about calcium, so the main sources, if we think about it, you mainly think about milk. However, plants are also very high in these. So for example, broccoli and cauliflower both have more calcium per gram portion than milk. Also, stuff like spinach, you might think that has a lot of calcium, and it does. However, it has this molecule called oxalate, which diminishes its ability to be transported and absorbed in the body. So if we talk about the functions of calcium, what are they? So we've got obviously the main structure, no, should be an R there. So we've got the main structure in bones. As we know, we need to have calcium to grow strong, and that's under tight hormone control, such as the vitamin D. Obviously debatable if it's a hormone, but as we talked about vitamins in the last lecture, vitamin D heavily regulates the function of calcium. So the remaining is an extracellular fluid. So we know that it helps with contraction of muscle cells and the activation of this actin and myosin. Also the regulation in blood pressure and blood clotting. It also relates heavily in some neurons to release neurotransmitters such as GABA. So what happens when we have too little of this? So first we've got tetany, and that's basically the spontaneous contraction of muscles when we have this extracellular calcium which drops. We also obviously have low peak bone mass. So if you have not enough calcium, which is the main component of bones, you get this low peak bone mass, as well as low intake during adult years increase the rate of bone loss, and that can therefore increase the risk of osteoporosis, as well as the risk of fracture risk as well in hand with that. On the other side, we've got toxicity, so too much calcium. You can get this nausea, vomiting, coma, and even death. So how calcium can interfere with bioavailability of other minerals, because it's that common 1+, so it can interfere with sodium and potassium, for example. Also, excess calcium can, from supplements specifically, promotes kidney stone formation. So if we talk about now the other side, so the trace minerals, so we've got iron, and that can be either heme, so Fe, and that's part of the hemoglobin and myoglobin, as we know, part of the red blood cells. And we've got non-heme, which is mainly from plant and animal foods. So what are the functions? So obviously it delivers oxygen to cells through this hemoglobin. Also acts as a cofactor in Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain. Also regulates normal immune function, and is also part of this important catalase enzyme which protects from oxidative damage. So we also talk about the inhibition and enhancement of some of these minerals. So we take iron as the example here. So as we talked about inhibition through other cations with similar charge. Also dietary fiber, which contains phytate. And we've got polyphenols that contain tannins, and protein in soya containing this phytic acid. Also, eggs are seen to inhibit iron as well through this phosphatin acid, I believe. And we can also on the other side have enhancers, so such as acids such as ascorbic acid, sugars such as fructose that form these soluble Fe complexes which are easily absorbed, as well as alcohol, which alters the rate of hepcidin production, which basically regulates AFE metabolism. So the three main molecules that we talked about are oxalates, so that's from like green vegetables, which can have an inhibitory effect. We've got tannins from tea mainly, and we've got phytates from whole grains and soya as well, which can act as a inhibitor. So then if we talk about the deficiencies, so obviously iron plays that important role in the blood. So if you've got deficiency, we ever expect to see this anemia, and you can get this homochromic, meaning pale, and a microcytic, meaning small red blood cells. Therefore, we can see fatigue and weakness because not enough oxygen is being delivered, so we feel weak. But we can also get this impaired cognitive development if there's not enough blood getting into the brain. You're also more prone to infection, and this condition called pica, which basically develops from Latin and the word for magpie, and magpies are generally known to eat anything they can get their hands on. So pica is basically this condition where you've got this taste for stuff that we're not meant to eat normally. Toxicity. So the main problem that you have is this hemochromatosis, and it's seen to be genetic. It's an inherited disorder, and what basically happens is you've got this increased iron absorption leading to deposits throughout the body. Also overconsumption through high meat diets, so if you eat a lot of red meat and stuff like that. And the excess promotes formation of these free radicals as well. If we talk about then blood pressure and kind of how can a plant-based diet prevent this. So diets high in sodium significantly increase the risk of hypertension. Basically what happens is when you've got sodium in the blood, that increases the water to follow that through osmosis, and therefore we get an increase in blood pressure. And that seems to be more sensitive in populations such as African Americans. Also, diets high in minerals such as potassium, calcium and magnesium are seen to reverse that with a lower incidence of hypertension. So what are the kind of risk factors of hypertension? So obviously genetic, as we mentioned, family history or ethnic or racial background, your age. So as you age, you obviously more of a risk of hypertension as your body can't regulate the process anymore. Also any for other existing diseases, so kidney failure, stuff like that. Also diabetes, kidney damage and obesity. Also lifestyle factors, so such as lack of physical activity, heavy alcohol consumption, smoking, stress and diet. So all of those could have an effect on your blood pressure, so make sure you stay healthy. And that will be it for minerals. So I hope you enjoyed. That was a really quick summary. Yeah, not much to talk about for them. But yeah, don't forget to check the description for any links you're interested, especially books which will help you out with the knowledge. And if you want to have a read to do with these disorders, toxicity and deficiencies as well. So I hope you enjoyed the video. So like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheerio.